Okay, so today we are going to go over the March releases recap, which you can find on, whoops, I'm so sorry, on the meeting and trainings page at the bottom. And I'm going to start with USAS for March, and then we'll go through all the other releases. So USAS had 3 regular releases and 1 hotfix. And one of the big new features were included the import ability for the account change requests. This is for the normal account change, not fund change, but now you have an import button that you can use. I'm going to go ahead and pull up an example of a spreadsheet, and we'll do one together. So this is the template that you can find minus the row 2 and 3, but the template's available in our documentation. You'll need the from account must exist. The to account or all these accounts must be separated by a dash. So like the normal format of an account, whether it's revenue or expenditure. Both can be included on the same spreadsheet. Um, the to account, if this account is not created, USAS will create it upon implementation of the account change. And the to account must be active. So you see here, there's no fiscal year. You're going to define the fiscal year that you want. And if you do not, it will default to the current fiscal year. So let's take the spreadsheet and go into the application. And we have that new import button here on the grid. One, two, one, two. I want to make sure it wasn't sitting out here on the grid already. So we'll click the import button, choose that file that we were just looking at. And load. Now, the only difference between the manual account change and the import option is this file that's created is only going to show errors and not warnings. Whereas when you do it manually, it will include warnings. So I show 2 records loaded. So now you can see that the one that we'll pull this up in a little. The 2 accounts, the one is here, 1212 for the revenue account. And the other one is the top row. So then I can go ahead and process it. So if you have a bunch of these, not just 2, it would be very handy to use. And then also with the account change, when one account change is in progress and the application for some reason is restarted, that in progress account change will go back to or reset to the new status. And then I wanted to show this just side by side. So this is what it looked like before. The failed attempt field was up here, and now on the user, it is down here under like the password expirations and other applicable information. So that just moved, and you'll find it on the user field down below here. And then the length of the AP invoice for like those Amazon orders that have like so many digits and characters. Now it looks like this. It's longer than needed and it's up to 30 characters. And I'm not doing this live, but I was entering this invoice number and I attempted to put in order and it just stopped me when the cutoff is there. So my ER on the last part of the invoice number for order was not there because that's the limit of that field. So that'll stop the user as well. And then users with permissions to view documents in the file archive or in the document store now do have the ability with the permission to view them in the document store. Before it was the standard user could not, and now they can, as before. And then also with the document store, the classic USAS documents, there was a problem viewing those documents. That bug has been fixed, as well as the account change with the account dimensions with start and stop dates. That's been corrected. And then the account ledger query, my favorite grid in the whole application, now shows the check number for refunds. Whereas before you couldn't pull that field in, or I'm sorry, it didn't show the check number for refunds, and now it will. The top two refunds did not have a check number assigned, so that's why it's not populated. But now you can find the check number for the refund number. And then with the implementation of the document store, we fixed a bug that was related to the custom forms for printing and for emailing transactions. So that's been corrected as well. Any questions on the USAS releases? Okay, so there were no inventory releases in the month of March. However, there was one today, so you'll get that notice later today. I'm gonna, instead of scrolling, just jump to the ESS releases. There were two regular releases in the month of March, and two of them had to do with the automatic period generator, which sets up if you defined the employees for the timesheets, when the period generator creates the automatic or the period, it would also create the timesheets. But now, if a user deleted that automatic period generator that was set up, it will now clean up any periods that were attached to that period generator that was deleted. Most of you probably did not see that, but it's now improved with that. And then the first one, it's that timesheet that was missing the timesheet shift. So now if it's missing, instead of erroring it out, it will treat that timesheet as a flexible shift, which when you're looking at the timesheet, it will not have like start and stop times defined, because a flexible timesheet shift would be any hours of the day and the user would have to populate those hours. So it's going to default to a flexible shift if it's missing the timesheet shift. And then the absence grid, if a negative was found in USPS, it wasn't reflecting that in ESS. I'm going to zoom and see if we can get this a little bit bigger. So in USPS, it was showing these the same day, 128.26, as a positive and negative. But in UESS, I'm sorry, they were both for the same day as a positive. So now that's been corrected. It will reflect a negative as it was. And then they improved the file upload user, what the user sees when they're creating the exported leave request. And then we did have a few bugs. One was a query in the leave request group chain, as well as the timesheet group change. And that bug was preventing the timesheet or the both the timesheet and leave request submission of workflows. That's been corrected. And then there was a query in the sub-coordinator grid that wasn't working correctly. There was another one when a locking exception was locking multiple users out, um, which was basically if you and I would push the same button at the same time, it would lock, but they did something with that to make it better. And then they corrected a bug in the audit report. So if I did something today in ESS before, if I wanted to get the audit report results, I would have to do today through tomorrow. It was like cutting off. I couldn't do just today because then it would show nothing. So they fixed the query or whatever in the back. So now if I just wanted today, it works correctly with the stop date. And then some internal changes that they did to the framework, which I'll leave that to you guys to Google what that means. Any questions on USAS or ESS before I pass it on to Bella for the USPS? Okay. Have a good weekend.
Good morning. Happy Friday. Okay, can you see my screen?
Yep.
Thank you. Okay, welcome to Fridays with Fiscal. I will be covering the USPS releases, and we had 3 major releases this month. All 3 were regular releases, and there was actually a lot of work done on the roadmap items, which I'm sure you're all pleased to see. These are items that have been requested for the longest time and made it to the roadmap, and there was a lot of progress made on these projects. As you can see, I believe we had 21 items overall included in these releases. So, our developers have been busy. And out of these 21, 5 are roadmap items, which almost includes all of the items included in this year's roadmap. I believe there's like 3 more that they need to finalize. So, I just wanted to share that. Okay, so the very first item is a new feature, which is, as I mentioned, part of the roadmap. There was a request for the payroll item templates to be added to the actual payroll item grid, which was not an option. So the developers found a workaround and they created its own designated area. So it's still within the payroll item. Log me out. So under core payroll items, previously you would go to the payroll item and then you would have to pull up a specific employee, a specific payroll item record in order to access these templates. And now they created its own designated area. It's under the payroll item template menu option. And I believe the plan is for them to do this with any other grid for any data grids that allow templates. So you might see additional menus being added to the specific grids that allow templates to be used. So this is where you would maintain, you can create and maintain or delete your templates. So you can have all these, you have a lot more flexibility with these, and so the create option is available through here. You can choose any payroll item. Let's see, I'll just go with the see, I have one set up already, but I'm gonna try to demo another one. So once you access the selected payroll item, all you need to do is just fill in the required fields. Everything that is not editable is going to be grayed out, just like on the other screen. So nothing has changed. And then you can just select the rate type. And then the pay cycle. And find a rate. And then you can add start stop dates, choose your deduction max amount, max type, and then the max amount, specific date. So everything is just the same exact layout as on the other screen. And then once you have this finalized, and you can always go back and edit. So you can just create a template, give it a name. Just name it test 2 because I already have one. And once the template has been saved, it will be added to this grid. So you can maintain it on this grid, and then it will be available for you to utilize under the core payroll items grid. Payroll item. Okay, so if I want to create a payroll item for a specific employee, go ahead and continue. And then you can go ahead and choose a template. So this is the one I just created. And it will pre-fill the values. And then another detail regarding this feature is you can still continue to create them the way you used to. So if you just decide to start setting it up and then make your selections under the actual payroll item screen and then save it as a template, it will work. And then that specific template will be populated on the other grid as well. So these two interfaces integrate. So that's the nice, flexibility about having these two options, because you can now, if you're more comfortable doing things the way you're used to, you can still continue to save them here and then go back and maintain them on the other grid. Any questions so far? Okay. So this was a new feature. No harm in deleting these. So as far as, because all you're deleting is the template. And once it's been added to a payroll item, it should not break things. Is that your concern, Andrew? As far as I know, it should not be a problem because it does give you a warning. 1 second, let me go back. So it's been already utilized. Did I save that other record? I want to test it. Okay, thank you, Heidi. I have helpers and I so need it. Thank you. Yes, so it should not be a problem. It will give you a warning before you attempt to delete one. So, and just in case you click the wrong one, but it maintains the data set up when applied to an actual payroll item. Thank you so much. Great question. Okay, observations, enhancements are always welcome. And there was an issue with this, which I believe the fix for that will be included in today's release that's coming out today. What was happening, there's certain display issues, not all of them, but there have been problems like when you try to view them, you would get an error. And that will be released today, if I'm not mistaken. It's scheduled to go out today. So there was an issue with certain configurations not working for only specific payroll item types. So if you received an error when trying to access any of these, if you went through your list or any, for any district, that should be resolved. So that was a bug. Don't we love bugs? There's always one with any of the releases. Okay, so moving on to the next one. This is another new feature. It's really not visible yet. It's called, they added a Swagger UI, very cool terminology. So they basically started working on the API documentation, the REST API documentation for USPS. This is internal work and it will be in progress for a while. So you will see this internal comment on upcoming releases. So just that you know what it's about. It's this documentation will be released once it's been completed, and it will be available under the help documentation tab. So I have a screenshot here. Basically, you'll be able to access it by going to help. Oops, not about documentation. And there will be another menu option down here with the specs for endpoints and all that good stuff for the API connections. Okay, there were a lot of improvements done in the past month. So there was one issue pertaining to the attendance import service, specifically the loader had the option, and it's always been an option to add expenditure accounts when you were loading future or current paid for the miscellaneous pay type. So it only worked with the miscellaneous. In any other instance, the system just never looked at that expenditure account, and then it just converted it to overtime object codes or any other object code the way it's configured in the system. So now they changed it because there was a need for this after the creating these OT and blended overtime pay types to allow for those specified accounts to be loaded, and the system will no longer switch them to an overtime object code. And we also updated the documentation, which I have linked in here, where you can see this change noted. And it also applies to XREF codes. So if you enter an XREF code, it will just keep that account. There was also an improvement on the attendance journal create form. So if you went to core attendance create, so there was an improvement. However, there were some issues following that release, which required some fixes. And this is still ongoing, and I know there's some performance issues. I believe today's release will include another fix specific to the display. As you can see, even on my screen, like the unit does not display. I mean, I can manually adjust it, but it will not save these settings, and it will revert to that original one, which is not too user-friendly. So this should be corrected, I believe, in today's release. And I know there have been some other performance issues, which they are still reviewing. And so this is an ongoing project, but the goal is to make this more user-friendly and efficient, because I know this is used a lot. So those were the changes made to the attendance. And I can actually go down to the bugs, because I think the bugs introduced with this improvement was that it allowed incorrect category selections for attendance. So if you selected attendance, you could see absence records, different categories. So it didn't make sense, to have absence categories with attendance. So they corrected that, and then there was a bug that disabled the sub selection when copying a row. So basically, when they wanted to select a substitute, this option was not available. It wasn't working. Okay, and that's been fixed. Okay. The next item is the updates to the W2 form. So the developers implemented the new W2 form requirements based on the draft that was finalized and made available. So everything's been updated, the W2 report and the W2 form and the XML file to pull in the overtime amounts under the appropriate fields, and then everything aligns. And as you know, as of this year, overtime will be listed under the under box 12. The TT is the code, so it will get its own field. It will no longer be in box 14 as last year. That was just a temporary solution. So all of these were implemented and are available for the upcoming calendar year, which is just approaching much faster than what I'm ready for. The pay slips have been updated as well. The total hours worked will now include absence and dock hours. Previously, the total hours worked only included units from regular, miscellaneous, and overtime pay types. And this calculation has now been updated to subtract dock pay type units. And the system now totals units for regular, miscellaneous, overtime, and dock pay types. And I know this has been requested for a while. For more details on how the calculation works for the total hours worked and for hours over 40 a week and just other commonly asked questions, we created a document that I have linked in here. That's the HB 106, the Pay Stub Protection Act page. So please feel free to check that out for additional details. They also updated the W-2 qualified overtime calculations for the fifth time, maybe. I lost count. So as you know, this has been an ongoing and ever-changing topic, the QOT amounts, and we so appreciate all your feedback and doing all the validations and relaying the district's feedback to us so we can get it working correctly. And there have been some issues. There's still one item outstanding, which I will reference here and I will cover. So the change that was implemented during March had to do with the calculate overtime method. It initially used hours worked, and it now uses the units property of the historical pay amount. So whenever there were no retire hours entered, it did not pull in those OT amounts on the W2 report. So the developers reviewed the process and then they switched it to the units property, which is, the what's mainly utilized and consistent. With this release, there was an issue introduced which will be fixed in not 2 days, but in the following fixed version, 2026.7.0. This fixed version is scheduled in 2 weeks, so it should be April 14th, 24th. And what happened with this change, the calculation for the daily, for employees with daily rates is no longer auto-calculating the hourly, the hourly rates as the system was doing previously. So they're going to revert that to the same behavior as what we had in place prior to the fix from hours worked to units. And another important issue that we want to make you aware is like in case of mid-year contract changes. So if you, for accurate qualifying overtime amount calculations, we recommend creating a new compensation or adding a mid-year contract change under the new contract. The reason for this is because the system examines the compensation ID in the payment history. And if you only update the rate under the existing compensation, so if there's a rate change and you update it, when the compensations, when the system looks and runs the calculations, it will look at the compensation ID, which will not change. So it will not be able to recognize, the two different events. So the two different rates. So when a compensation when a mid-year contract change is done, we definitely advise you to do to create a separate compensation that has its own separate ID. Otherwise, the calculation will not be accurate. Do you any questions on that? And then, as I mentioned, this is an ongoing work in progress. So with the overtime, we definitely recommend that districts do their validations after, especially after each release. Um, but I would almost ask that they hold off from applying adjustments too early on in the process. Because, basically they still have time until the end of the year. And we strongly encourage that they still maintain their internal controls. So I'm sure everyone does that. I'm sure, everyone's been tracking overtime on their own separate spreadsheets even previously. So if, especially during this transitional year, because this year is one, this is a brand new feature and requirement. And, it does take a while until we can get everything aligned correctly. So in the meantime, if I would definitely recommend that they do review their entries, what they have in there so far, but maybe refrain from entering adjustments as of yet before we have like the final um working um formula that is, covers all the little all the aspects of this process because it's pretty complex. And as you see, like there's changes after each release and just to save them time. So maybe with the adjustments, if they could hold off a little longer, but in the meantime, definitely do the tracking and the validations through the reports that are currently available. And we will keep you informed, once we have another report is being worked on. I know the developers are wanting to create a report that is more geared towards um, troubleshooting and identifying overtime entries. And that will be in one of the upcoming releases as well. Any questions? I could go on and on about overtime for a long time, but I just don't want to add overtime to your schedule. The blended overtime calculator. So there were some changes made. This is also a new feature recently released. So the blended overtime calculator had a couple of changes. So if we go to utilities, blended overtime. And so a couple of things have changed. When I was selecting the employee, that list, that drop down actually included archived employees, and they changed it, so it no longer does. And the other change, which is, I'm sure it's going to be well received by everybody. So they made, initially it was not an option to add one position and compensation multiple times, which, it's in case of like for bus drivers and in similar scenarios, you definitely want to be able to add multiple compensations with different rates depending on the hours worked and the circumstances. So, oh, this is not my bus driver. Just hold an example. I don't know if I can really recreate it. Well, let's say that they worked a lot and in different for different rates. So you can now go back and choose the same exact position and add another compensation entry and then change the rate. So this is a feature that's been requested multiple times, and I'm sure it will be useful, especially when it comes to calculating blended rates for bus drivers. So these were the two enhancements pertaining to the blended overtime calculator, and there's actually more coming. So there is a bug with this. So if which is, I believe, let's see. Do I have a release date on that one? So that's going to be in the upcoming version 2026.7 on April 24th. And so this is a bug where if you choose an employee and then you switch to another one, it will not clear that prior selections entries. So they are addressing this problem. They will just have to manually clear out those fields. And then there's a feedback issue, which we definitely recommend that you make your districts aware if this is and let us know if you would like to add more requests, because this is a feedback issue that will have to go through the prioritization committee. To add a print option. And there's also discussions of adding an option where you can directly post into future pay and current pay. We just do not have a separate issue created for that. Can you? I'm sorry, link her for printing EOT. Oh, so are you referring to this one?
Yes.
Okay,
Thanks, Bella.
sure. Yeah, so this is, yeah, if you have more districts requesting this feature, just send us a ticket so we can increase the number of times requested.
Can you copy that link into the chat box,
Oh,
Bella?
yeah.
Thank you, honey. Oh, Lori got you. Thank you, girls.
Sorry, I just, you know, not as coordinated while I'm on Zoom. Okay, thank you. Thank you both. Okay. And as I mentioned, once we have another feedback issue created for the post to future and current, we will make that available as well. The next one, I'm sorry, I hope I'm not taking too long. It's just 2021 changes. I better wrap this up quickly. New contracts. So there was a new option added during activation to leave contract stop dates as is. So this is another roadmap item. This has been requested for a while. This mainly became a problem when districts wanted to activate their contracts, their 9-month contracts earlier. And they what happened, they had to actually go through another step because the system automatically put in a stop date. It was a day prior to the new contract start date. So they had to go back and change all those stop dates. And the system now has the option of my new contracts. Okay, so I already have one in here. So if you go and select this and you're ready to activate it, this is the new option they added. So you can uncheck the update stop date on old compensation and it will preserve the date. It will preserve the current date so they can continue to pay through the end of August on the current compensation. So you would just have to uncheck it and then click activate. So this will save you a step of having to go back and change all those stop dates. Hopefully that will make your life a little easier. Okay, they also added a new property to the position screen to determine if the employee is a substitute. This property will be used solely by SubHub. So if you go to pull up my employees. I'll just stick to Joy Camper, which stands for Happy Camper. Okay, so on the position screen, I'm sure you've noticed. Oh, I haven't zoomed in on second. So you'll see the substitute checkbox. So, and this is not applicable because I don't have a teacher here, but you would be able to go ahead and check this and then save it. You can also mass change it. And this will integrate with the new SubHub application. So this is just part of the prep work for the upcoming SubHub instance that we're so excited about. Okay, the next one is another very useful enhancement, I believe. This was for the employee onboarding. So if you had an employee record entered, if you started the onboarding process and creating an employee, so the system lets you fill in all these fields, and then when you were ready to save and post, that is when it gave you an error if the employee already was added, or like it will give you an error on the duplicate social security number. So for my example, he's already in the system, which of course I forgot about. So if I try to save this, it will give me an error right away. So you don't waste your time going through all these fields and then, when you're about to save it or post it, after going all through the steps that, of the onboarding wizard. So I think this will be a time saver, hopefully, for everybody, that they moved up the validation to take place much sooner in the process. Any questions on this? Okay. They also made some improvements on the payroll item grid. I know there have been problems with the filtering on specific columns. So just to show you quickly, in case you've been waiting for this change, under the payroll item grid, so there were a few columns that you could not really filter by because it was requiring a specific, the enum code, which like nobody really knew what it was. So you couldn't really filter by pay cycle. You had to know that actual code. So like these filters were basically broken. So now if you want to filter by split, it will give you everything. Or if you just do first, so you can do keyword searches and it will return results. Previously, nothing really worked. So the same thing for other credentials here. I believe the original code was to use an asterisk. Yeah, and like no one really knew that was the code in the background. So now you can just filter by the actual description. Okay, so this was also part of the roadmap improvements. We're getting there, we're getting there. Okay, and these next two ones, these are pretty major. Same thing, roadmap requests, and these have been requested for a long time. So you'll have the option to carry over from prior years certain, because everybody has different negotiated agreements. So certain districts have it where you can carry over just a couple days or a certain amount of hours. And previously that was not an option. It would just reset it to the reset value. So now if you go to processing, benefit update and projection, and reset personal leave, now you have these two new options. You can carry over amounts for date, you can carry over daily balances or hourly balances. And let's say I want to carry over 1 day and maybe 8 hours, and I'll just use my test pay group. So, and please know that I'm running it in projection. So if you want to change this to actual, you will just have to change it here. But I will be running it for a projection report. So it will tell you what were the entries entered, and so I think Joe Smith was my hourly, so he had his leave set as hourly, and as you can see, his previous balance was 12, and then his new balance is 30. For Bob Walters, so it allowed 1 day to be carried over up to his their max of 4. So this gives you a lot more flexibility basically when you have those scenarios where they want a specific they all have different arrangements, and I know this was like the missing piece where they couldn't really do these easily in the system. And along the same lines, it also applies to trying to make it larger. The same thing applies to convert personal leave to pay. They added the maximum balance to convert to pay option, and the convert personal leave to sick leave. Same thing. They added the maximum value of personal day and hours to convert, because up till now you could only do the minimum. So that was the only defined option, and now you just have the full range. So you have a lot more flexibility. Any questions on these? I'm sure districts will love these enhancements. Hopefully make it easier for them. Okay, and then there was one more update that pertains to the attendance and absence import. It will now ignore any blank lines in the file. And it's a little vague, but this was happening in instances where attendance was pulled from third parties like Time Clock, or I know sometimes ASAP, and then they loaded the attendance through USPS. Sometimes those files created issues where it would just run for the longest time, or cause the system to crash. Actually, we've had that happen. And the reason why that was happening, and it could have been just like 200 or just a couple of records, and it just kept spinning and spinning. And the reason for that was because if they use those extracts from like a third-party application, and they just copy and paste, and they, constantly use the same exact import file, what happens, and I think I have an example here. So if you take their import file and open it in Notepad++, you're going to see a lot of blank rows. So there's no data, but the file perceives these lines as actual data. So you can see we're looking at millions of records here. And the system was literally running through all these blank rows, trying to load them. And then each of these rows were triggering error messages in the logs, causing, it was just an ordeal to get these resolved. So now the developers added the option where the system will ignore these blank lines. It happened under the attendance absence import, and I think it also it was done under another UI. I think it was the payroll item loads. And if you encounter any issues where the loads are taking a long time, I definitely recommend checking, their files in Notepad++, because, this was addressed for attendance specifically, but any type of platform that allows mass loads, might need to be addressed separately. So if this happens, just reach out and let us know, because some adjustments might need to be made, or what they can do is just use go to special to remove all the blank lines from their source file. And then that should no longer be a problem. Okay, gosh, sorry, Amanda. I'm almost done. As far as bugs, we had a bug pertaining to the document store. I know that specifically the other tab was not displaying the forms. They were loaded. It was just a display issue. So they corrected that problem. There was also a bug where the W-2 dependent care amounts did not include amount withheld adjustments for a dependent care payroll item. They included adjustments and withholdings for the federal tax item, unapplicable. But if an adjustment was made under the actual payroll item and not under the dependent care selection of the federal tax item, it was not included in the W-2 calculation. So that's been corrected. There was also an update to the payroll item max amounts to include adjustment journals, and I'm sure everyone's excited to hear this because this was creating problems where the max amounts could be exceeded if there were any adjustments or error adjustments. It was not reflected in that maximum remaining amount, and it caused problems where they could actually go above that threshold. And then the attendance create I already addressed when I was covering the improvements further up. So please let me know if you have any questions about any of these items.
Hi, Bella. This is Andrew. I wanted to say out loud, for the sake of the recording, how exciting the max on the personal leave carryover options are. I mean, a lot of this stuff is great, but that
Yeah,
is really, really,
I
really
agree.
good. So, yes.
I appreciate that, Andrew, and we're happy to hear that you're all happy. That's the goal, right? And our developers are working hard to get things resolved as quickly as possible. And we appreciate all you do and all the feedback you provide and helping us, implement all these enhancements and improvements. Thank you so much. Okay. Hearing no other questions, I will hand it over to Amanda. Sorry, Amanda, took a little longer.
No worries. Not a problem at all. Okay, let me get sharing here. Okay, I just need to rearrange my windows real quick. Okay. All right. So, good morning, everyone. I'm here to talk about the Ippy Dippy releases today. So we'll wrap it up with this. We had two regular releases in March and a hot fix. I also threw the two hot fixes from the beginning of April on here because they were directly relevant to what we're going to be talking about. So, that'll be included as well. Now, we definitely had a theme for what our team was working on this month, and the majority of the JIRA issues that we completed relate to mass load. So uh, we sort of have had this planned for a bit, and the first wave, like back at the end of last year, we had to get everybody off of the old kiosk Ippy Dippy. We had that kiosk loader that was used to translate the kiosk data over. But what the next plan is to allow a way to be able to import records not from kiosk. And so these mass loaders are a way to do that, and also to update data. So being able to take a spreadsheet out of the system, make changes to a certain group of records, and then be able to import it back in without having to manually do each record, similar to import options we have in our other software. So, so this was that phase. I will say as well, we know that the next phase that the next additional thing to being able to start a new district is to be able to do Ippy Dippy without USPS. So at this point, USPS is still required, but we have stuff in the works already for that next situation of being able to start Ippy Dippy, with fresh data, um, or with data that wasn't from the legacy kiosk rather, and then be able to um, use it with or without USPS. So for now, this is the mass load. It can also be used for updates, as I mentioned. Let's see. So if we have USPS district but no legacy kiosk, are we ready to load everything in? Yes. So when we get to the bottom of talking about this, I actually even have a link for you, Andrew. Yes. Yes. Um, so these are ready to go. We've added a mass load option under the system manager menu or the system menu. And so it looks something like this. We have activities, activity option groups, all that stuff, the plans, and relevant information, and then users was previously there. So all these pieces are ready now. I've kind of just turned this into mass load, but if you look at our issue list for new features, it was like added committee loader, added activity loader. So this is related to everything as far as the new features. So with the mass loading, and again, I'm gonna try and compartmentalize because there's the process of, okay, yes, these can be used to import new data, but they also can be used to update existing data. And so when you're doing those updates, generally the requirements or like the restrictions on what you can update, it's the same as how it would work in the software. So, for example, here, if a field can't be edited on an activity after it's approved, it can't be modified with the loader. So it still abides by like the same rules, which is consistent with like generally how our imports work in our other software. So that's usually how it works. I say usually because there are some exceptions. Like if you're creating new activities, they can have any status because we need to be able to allow for you to import like approved activities in the case when somebody is setting up a new district. So this is only available to be used by admin level or district manager users. So it is something that is locked down, so that with having some of that mass updatability, it's not just something that anybody would be able to do. But that's sort of like the general logic of how the updates work and what's allowed. The other thing is we added, so all the grids that are associated with these records that you could mass load, we do also have an export grid items that was added to those grids so that for when you are updating, you can extract first, you can filter your grid, extract, get your records, and then start with a spreadsheet to update. You're not having to like create a spreadsheet from scratch. So let's look at a couple things here. I have my mass load import criteria page linked. And what we have out here, so this is in the Ippy Dippy manual underneath the system menu, and we have mass load. So this page is like your general criteria. So if I want to update something with activities, this is where I have a template. That template is in CSV, so you got to be careful, with formatting and stuff as you work in that, but it needs to be CSV to import back in. So we have our template, and then we have all the fields defined here. Our development team helped us with the formatting and everything. So we have this all confirmed directly with them so that every single field that you could update or add, we have all of the details here on what all the options are or like what format they need to be in. So we have this um, for each of the different options for mass load. I wanted to show, so there's a couple of fields I want to point out here, and this happens um, in a couple different categories. Now, if you all remember, for those of you that did the kiosk imports, there was a lot more importers than this, right? Because like some things have subsets. So we have like plans, but then plans have goals and focus areas. Activities have like those activity option groups, and there could be multiple. So how this works is now it's all activities is all in just one spreadsheet. But there may be variety depending on how your district has it set up. So thank you, Michelle, for posting this page in the chat. So if we look here, we have these option X group. So what this is going to look like is if we have activities and this district has two option groups that are possibilities on the account or on the activity field, you would see like option one group, option one option, option one description. And then it could be option two, three. Those would be column headers that would basically increment to accommodate what they have. So let's look at it here, show you what I mean. So see, we have option one. If they didn't have, if a district doesn't use option groups, then you might not have any. So that's going to be the part that's like a little bit flexible on these sheets, on these templates. Like, depending on how many option groups, your template will have more or less columns. It was basically it. Um, so I wanted to kind of talk that through. That you'll see that noted on some of these other ones too. Sorry for the scrolling. So we have it noted here on the activity options. On the plans, it works the same with the focus areas. So I just kind of wanted to talk that through while we have a chance to talk about it. Okay, let's go look at this in the software. So I'm in my test database. So when we come in here, it is going to be system mass load, and we have our mass load options. So this works similar to the other loads that you may be familiar with. Is you pick your option, you upload your file, click import, and then it'll show you any error messages, records loaded. You'll get a loader error file, either giving you errors or confirming. So that's pretty simple there. If I look at my activities grid, we're kind of sticking with activities for our example here, but I have this export grid at the top, so I can click that, export, and this will send it to a CSV that I can use as like my starting point if I wanted to make changes. And I brought that over to, because I had to share it with my browser window, so I brought it over to uh, a Google sheet here. So this is what it looks like. You'll have, your ID columns, the plan information, and then so on. I wanted to show, see, here's my option one group. If I had two option groups, it would look like this. If you do have if you have districts that are currently have data in there too, you can use this extract to kind of look at and see what that looks like. Of course, if there's like situations if you are trying to like create, I think it'll mostly be something that might be, you have to think more about when if you're creating brand new spreadsheets, right? Um so there's your extract, and then okay. So that's mostly what I wanted to show with our example there. Let me see. Um, the other things that we did, so we had a couple other like improvements, bug fixes here. Um, a lot of these things were sort of they're not things that we necessarily need to look at, but um we did like some cleanup. So do not allow editing activity or editing denied activities and plans. So we made sure that that's locked down. Allow uploading attachments to plans from the district view. So, usually a user would upload to their own plan, and that was always an option. But now we've added an additional layer where, like a district manager or somebody could go add an attachment to a plan for an employee, if that's needed. And then the reason for these hot fixes primarily was we released all the mass loaders on like through the regular releases, but then we did some additional like testing of other scenarios. We've been working with an ITC with a couple ITCs on a situation that I am going to talk about, a page that I have to help with updating data. But basically, like through some more hands-on, we found a couple other things that the team wanted to update, and so those hot fixes are fixes that we pushed to like immediately make additional updates to the mass loaders to get them, really fine-tuned. So we alphabetized the list. We changed some of the errors to from errors to warnings, and we allowed some different functionality. So let me see. And then the bugs. Uh, so here is where kind of goes hand in hand with the improvements and the bugs. We're all kind of fine-tuning the mass loaders. So for activity export, like we added some fields, we fixed some of the handling there. And um, as far as other bugs, so we fixed a bug preventing the fixing some of the audit reports. So if you were trying to run an audit report for this specific topic, that's fixed. Let's see. There's one. Oh, this is the one I wanted to specifically mention. So we fixed an error when attempting to create a new plan. This wasn't happening very long, but I wanted to mention it because it was kind of a stopper, and I know a couple people ran into it. But there was an error before the very last hotfix where if a user goes into their plan grid and tries to create a new plan, they were getting an error and it wouldn't let them create a new plan. That was fixed on the 6.3 hotfix, this very last one that came out this week. So if I know that some of with the Ippy Dippy instances, like with getting them started and everything, like I believe they may be on automatic updates, but it depends on, how you're hosting it, how it's set up, that sort of thing. So if you happen to have anybody run into it, you want to check your fixed version and make sure that you're on the most recent version because that is corrected. So, but that'll just happen. It's the most recent release. So I wanted to make sure I mentioned that. Okay. I know I'm kind of breezing through some of these, so forgive my odd ordering, but it's because I think, the mass loaders, we tweaked the things, but like it's important how it works now more so than like a couple, than like where we started versus where we got to a week later, right? So, what I want to talk about more specifically is these additional links that I have down here. So, also forgive me, I'm going to go out of order, but the future conversions using mass load is what I kind of mentioned previously, where if you have a brand new district at this point that uses USPS but not legacy kiosk, we have a walkthrough. Well, we have a checklist kind of rather that goes through and gives you the steps for setting this up. So it's kind of a work in progress. I actually just updated some of the formatting this week. So um, I mean, I believe it's ready enough, but I may be, we may still be tweaking some things in here. Primarily this first section, it could change once USPS is ready. Um, so we sort of have the USPS steps here. I have these kind of like listed, but we'll see once that's available how that updates. And then it goes through, your system setup and all the things you would look at to get everything set, getting your users in there, and then your general setup. And for these general setup options, you have, you could manually create, like if they only have one committee, you could manually create a committee. Or if you did have data from like another software, you could import that, or even, enter in a spreadsheet if that's easier, uh, with working with your district to get this in, however, you want to do it. So all of these have links to the loaders, and then this, would link right to that import criteria section that we looked at. And then we have the last step here is importing historic data. So if they do have plans and activities, either from another software or maybe they were keeping it on spreadsheets or something like that, you can now use these as the last step to get that loaded in as history. Alternatively, like it is optional. I mean, if they have their past stuff, like if they have like history that they've, tracked and saved and like, maybe they want to get in here and then, set up all of the options, that they're going to use going forward, but everyone's just going to create a new plan and start fresh. Like that's an option too. So that's ready to go there. Now, of course, understandably, like you all know, support is dynamic. Things don't always happen exactly to plan, right? So, um, some of you have been working with some districts that had a third party application and they needed to get converted before all of this was ready. So the other reason that we sort of expedited getting these mass loaders in there is because now we're seeing some districts that have imported using the kiosk loader format, and there are things that are coming over not as expected. So we've been working with the ITCs on this, and what I did is I put together this page based on the situations that I've been working with people on and what we've seen, and really, one of the reasons that our team pushed these mass loaders all out within the month of March is also because that update feature is going to be what was going to be really helpful to like clean up these files. And so this page is sort of, specifically for districts in that situation. So if that's something that you are working with your districts on, this is a page for you. If not, you don't have to worry about this. But I kind of went through here, and so we have situations like activities need to be removed from a plan. So, we had situations reported where, once the data came in, the users were looking at their plan and it has all activities for all of time, or, for how all of the activities they imported are just linked to their current plan. Well, any approved activities on a plan contribute to the total CEUs. So now that's not looking correct. So if that's the case, then you may need to cancel or deny some of those activities. And these would be the steps you can go through. We have like a manual option listed, but this goes through in how you can use these mass loaders to update activities. If you wanted to take that a step further, you could remove the activities from the current plan. And if they have like a second plan that is archived or needs to be archived, like you could move those activities to the other plan that they should have been on, so to say. So that's the steps for like this situation. Trying to add situations, like add, any steps for situations as we see them. So I just added one, with correcting dates so you can correct information. Um, and then there's some plan fields as well. So let me just jump all the way to the last one here. So like the other thing that we saw was like maybe they brought in one plan, but then it has like all the professional certificate, all of their licenses are on like their current plan, but that current plan is really just supposed to be for their current license. And so if you needed to go clean up the licenses that they have listed, you could do that with an export. So here's like a manual view of what that would be doing, but you could export the plans, you can review the credential keys and upload back that in, and that would either like add or remove the professional certifications they have listed. So, really, I think the difficult part is that from what I've seen, it's kind of situational. So, this, depends on kind of like what the data is looking like and also how the district wants to update it. So these are kind of different scenarios and different pieces, but depending on the situation, like you may want to do the remove activities and update the professional certification. So it may be like a combination of some of these steps that you may need to use. So of course, if you all have questions on these situations, we have been doing our best to help, and I hope that this page helps. I was really trying to put everything in one place for reference, but I'll continue to add to this if needed. And yeah. All right. So I have those things both linked in the bottom here. Um, but yeah, so it's all about mass load. That's really all I have. Michelle has also put the links to those pages in the chat for you to access. Um, so we are all good there. Yes, you're welcome, Jake. Yeah, so of course, let us know if you have any questions. But that is all we have for today. Thank you so much for coming to our recap, our release recap for March, and have a great weekend, everyone.